Dr. Lotte Valentin, thank you so much for being here on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder.
Well, thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Oh man, it's so good having you. I know you're really making such an impact, with your podcast, with your book, with your teachings. You just do so much to elevate the planet and, our consciousness. But for my viewers who, haven't heard a little bit about yourself, because you do, I'm trying to label you and I can't. So I'll let you kind of maybe start where maybe take us through a little bit of a closer look at you because you're making quite an impact on the circuit these days and really helping to raise the consciousness of the planet in so many beautiful avenues.
Yeah, I know. It's been a long, crazy journey because when you think about how I was actually born and raised in Northern Europe in Sweden, so my family is still over there. My father was a physician, and my mom went back to work when I was 12. I was the youngest of four. And I was confirmed when I was 14, like a lot of my friends. We all belonged to the Lutheran Church because the church and the state were not separated until the end of the 1970s,
Mm,
I think. So we used to go to the church to get a passport. So that's how I grew up. And then I married an American and I moved to the United States when I was 21. I transferred into Boston University where my husband was doing his last year as a senior after we got married and majored in business and computer science. And then I worked for IBM in New York as a programmer and systems analyst.
mm,
So, I mean, that's where my life started. So, I had no spiritual beliefs. I did not believe in the afterlife, the spirit world, angels, any in religion. I mean, you name it.
mm,
It was you die, it's black, you're gone. That was
right.
my philosophy. So then I started having children and I took a leave of absence and I had 2 kids, then I had my 3rd child. And that is when my life took a 180-degree turn and I had my first near death experience. So now I'm 34 years old and
Mm,
we're living in California at the time. That's where my husband's work took us. And we were in Huntington Beach, California. And I gave birth in Anaheim, so people who has been to Disneyland or know where that is, it's in Anaheim.
yep.
And so the birth itself was quite that's where all the drama starts. So I gave birth, but I'm contracting on the table. I'm like 3 minutes apart with my contractions, getting close to giving birth, and we have a 7.4 earthquake.
Mm,
And this is one of those moments in my life when I thought I was going to die because this hospital was built on rollers and it was rolling from
mm,
side to side. And there were windows from the floor to the ceiling. And they were leaning, my husband, the nurses, everybody leaning over me on the table.
wow,
I would have literally levitated off the table because it was a big earthquake. It was a lander's quake. And I'm lying on the table thinking, well, this is it. We're all going to die. We're going to get buried in the ceiling tiles are going to cave in or the windows are going to break. And we lost all the power in the hospital. And magically the earthquake stopped. and
wow.
and um I remember my husband called my parents who was visiting, taking care of my boys who were now 6 and 3.5. And they said, "Everything is okay. We lost power, but everything is okay. We're alive. The house the house is still standing." And then I gave birth, and then we had another the aftershock, which was a 7.2 earthquake, and then, finally, they gave me the baby to hold, and as they gave me the baby, I just arched backwards and I just yelled to my husband, "Take the baby, take the baby." I was in severe pain, and that was the first time I hemorrhaged. So I'm hemorrhaging, but we're now in a hospital that is running on generators. We have the light of a night light in this room, and it's now about 6 o'clock in the morning. So it's getting, light outside. But needless to say, it was limited resources because we were in the middle of large earthquakes, not knowing, are we going to have another earthquake that's even bigger? And then at that point, the hospital will come down, right? So the hospital's running on generators. They massage my abdomen and a mountain of blood clots come out. And then they put me on IV drop to contract the uterus. They keep me in the hospital an extra day. And they say, "Okay, bleeding looks like it's slowed down, so we're gonna send you on your way." Well, 10 days later, my friends were having a baby shower for me at the park. and everybody was really excited because I had a girl and I had 2 boys before. So everybody was said, "I have to give you all the cute things for your girl." So I go to the park and I feel like I have to use the restroom. So I go to the restroom and this enormous blood clot comes out, the
Mm,
size of a man's large fist or a newborn baby's head. I mean, it was just enormous. And I tell my friend, I said, "This is it. I have to go. There's something terribly wrong." So I throw my kids in the car and we live like 2 blocks away. I get home. My parents, of course, are surprised to see me walk back in the door. So I tell them, "This is what happened. I have to lie down." And so I lie down. My husband comes home from work. We go to the ER and I tell them what happened. They do a manual inspection and they say, "Well, there isn't much blood coming out right now." And this is 1992.
mm,
And they said, "Sometimes there is a second lining that comes out." And so it could just have been a second lining. So you should be fine. Kept me for observation for a few hours and then sent me on my way. No lab work, no ultrasound, nothing was done. It was just a visual inspection as if you're supposed to see
mm,
what's going on. So the next day, same thing happens again. And it was in the evening at home. And my husband called the hospital. And I said, "Look, I'm not going. It's like 10 o'clock at night and they're not going to do anything anyway. They didn't do anything yesterday." So it was decided I should see the doctor the next morning. So we go to the doctor's office Friday morning, same thing again. He does a manual inspection, says, "Well, there isn't much blood coming out right now." Could have been a second lining that came out. And I'm like, "Twice?" And yeah, sometimes
mm,
that happens. Sent me on my way. Well, that afternoon, I hemorrhage again. So we said, "Well, this is the third time, so we got to go back to the ER. Something is obviously wrong. This would be the third time a second lining comes out." So back to the hospital, and again, a manual inspection. And they said, "Well, there isn't much blood coming out right now, so we're just going to keep you for observation." So I'm lying on this table in the ER. The door is closed, and I finally start bleeding again. And this is the divine intervention.
mm,
So this is when a nurse randomly comes to check on me, and she opens the door, she looks at me, and she can see all the blood on the table and all the mess on the papers, and she quickly cleans it up. She calls on the loudspeaker, "OBGYN, stat to the ER.
huh,
OBGYN, stat to the ER." So within like 30 seconds, this middle-aged doctor comes running to my room with a younger doctor in tow. And he says, "Okay, what happened?" And I tell him, "This is the third day I'm hemorrhaging." He sees all the bloody papers in the wastebasket, so he gets an idea what's going on because it wasn't, it was quite a mess. So as they're doing the manual inspection, I hemorrhage again, and another large blood
wow.
clot comes up.
Mm,
So this is what breaks the camel's back, right? So I try to sit up at this point and say, "I don't feel too good." And he knows exactly what's going on. So he just pushes me down on the table. And at this point, I can't keep my eyes open. So my eyes are closed now, but I can hear all the people coming into my room. And I have a nurse on my right putting a blood pressure cuff on. I have a nurse on my left trying to place an IV in my arm. And as they're trying to place that, I feel like I jumped out of an airplane without a parachute. I'm just like free fall, right?
mm,
And it's probably my blood pressure crashing. And the nurse on my right yells out, "50 over 15, hurry." And that's my blood pressure. And I'm still falling. So I'm like crashing. And I'm thinking, what's taking this nurse so long? Why can't she get into my vein? But, I'm going into shock now, so the veins collapse, which is why they place IVs when you go to the ER sometimes. Because if you go into shock or if you pass out, they wanna make sure they can inject medications. So that's why they just give you, regular, water,
mhm,
or sodium when you go to the ER. So, what do I do at this point, right? So I'm lying on this table, and soon after she yells out that blood pressure, "50 over 15, hurry." I know that I am dying. And this experience is so different from when I gave birth and I thought I was going to die. Many times we come into these, we're almost in a car accident or we're almost something bad is happening, something falls, almost the ladder falls down or something happens. But this was very different because I was completely aware of the fact that I was in the process of dying at this moment.
mm,
And as I'm lying on this table, the atheist that I was, What do? I pray to God to save my life. I say to God, I have 3 children under the age of 6. Please save me. They need a mother. And, I'm thinking if there's any truth to all those studies I did when I was 14. And shortly after I said that, I was pulled out of my body. And as I'm floating above my body, the first thing that I notice is that I'm outside my body. So my first thought was, how can I be outside my body and still be me? How does this work?
Mm.
Right?
Wow.
Because I had no belief system at all that that was even possible because I had always just been in my body. So as I'm in this state though, there is unconditional love and peace and you have no there is not a feeling of, "Oh, I need to hurry back to my body down there." No, it's just you're just in this limbo space where everything sort of just makes sense.
Mhm.
And in this state, I'm aware that there is no time. There is no time in this state. And you have access to past, present, and future all in time. And it drove me crazy for years. I read so many books on physics and time and trying to understand why is there no time? On the other side is just time here when I'm in my physical body. So, and I'm aware that I belong to the body as if that is my house, right? When I step outside my house, I know that I live in that house or that apartment or wherever I live. I belong there. That's where I have my stuff, right? This is that same sensation. You're just stepping outside your house. It's like you
Mhm.
drive to the grocery store in your car. You step out of the car and you go into the store, you know that's your car, and then you get back in your car. But
Mm.
this it's like the soul lives in the body, that's your car, that's your house. But you have the ability to step outside of it and then get back in. So
Mm.
that is what I learned from that experience. So, within a short amount of time, I get pulled back into my body, and it's within a split second. So, sometimes people ask me, "Did you leave through your crown chakra or heart chakra?" Or I have no idea because one split second you're inside and the next split second you are not. And it's just this instantaneous, I can't describe because it's just instantaneous. One second you're inside, next second you're not. At least that's my experience. So then I get back in my body and the next morning I'm lying in that hospital bed and I'm, contemplating, how can this be? How could I have been outside my body and
Mm.
still be me? How does this work? And all of a sudden, in the left room of my ceiling, I hear my sister-in-law, and she had just passed away about 10 days earlier. And
Wow.
I can hear her, and she says, "Everything's gonna be okay." Like,
Mm.
everything's gonna be okay. Because I'm, wondering, is this some kind of hallucination? Is this a real experience? How could this happen? Because I didn't have any belief system. I didn't know anything about near death experiences.
Mhm.
So it really, threw me for a loop. And I remember they sent this very nice nurse who was Norwegian. And she said, did anything unusual happen in the ER yesterday? And I'm thinking, "Well, if I tell her what happened, they're gonna lock me up in the psych ward. They're gonna think I'm a
Yeah.
complete lunatic, right? I'm
Mm.
never gonna see my kids again, because it was 1992, and, I didn't have any knowledge about all of this, but she probably did. She probably had awareness of people having these experiences, and she was trying to pull that out of me to help me, but I wasn't ready to share it in any way. So, they sent me home and then I was really sick for a long time. So the first thing they said was, "Oh, we have to give you blood."
Mm.
And I pleaded with the doctor and I said, "It's 1992 and um there were many people that got blood transfusion back then that then 5 or 6 years later found out they had AIDS. And there wasn't, I guess reliable ways of testing the blood back then. So I pleaded with him and I said, "Look, I have 3 kids under the age of 6. I don't wanna wake up 6 years from now and find out I have AIDS because I got a blood transfusion."
Mm.
And he said, "Well, we're gonna see how quickly we'll monitor you. We'll see how quickly you make blood." And so the decision was made. They said, you were otherwise in perfect health." I was 34, "And you're gonna not feel too good for a couple of months, but you're making blood, and we're gonna send you home with these medications and these supplements, and everything's gonna be fine in a few months." So I mostly slept the first 4 to 8 weeks. I don't have many memories except for my mom waking me up to feed me. And, I know my parents changed the ticket back to Sweden several times, and eventually my mother-in-law came, and I think that was at the end of August or something, and I was at the end of June. So it had been a minute, and she said, "What happened in the ER?" So I told her that what happened and how I had left my body, and she said, "Oh, you had a near-death experience." And
Mm,
she went out and she bought the book, Life After Life by Raymond Moody. And so that was my introduction to near-death experiences, and that I'm gonna say that's what saved my sanity at the time
mhm,
because, um, after reading that book, I understood that this is just, some kind of a phenomenon that happens to people that get really close to they're either dead or they're really close to death, right? And they can have these experiences. So, after 6 months, I got really sick, everybody got sick, we all got the flu. We go to a walk-in clinic, and we all have pneumonia. We all get antibiotics
mhm,
and inhalers and the works, and everybody gets well except for me. I get sicker. So 8
mm,
days after taking antibiotics, I go back to this clinic, and they say, "Wow, why are you so sick? You're only 34 years old, and, you're living in California, and, this shouldn't there's something else that's wrong with you." So they come back and they say, "Okay, we're gonna do a quick blood draw and see what your immune system looks like." They come back in the room and they say, "All right, you are really, really sick because you don't have an immune system. Do you have leukemia or AIDS?" And I said, "Well, this is what happened to me, and it's taken me, 6 months to just even get in the car and drive myself here." And they said, "Well, you are way too sick. You need to go to the ER right now because literally you can die. You have no immune system." And I said, "I'm not going to the ER." So they sent me home. I mean, I had so much PTSD from the experience itself. So anyway, and we also didn't have medical insurance at the time because my husband had his company had gotten bought and he had taken a new job and we were on that waiting period.
mhm,
So we just went to the walk-in clinic. So, it's just crazy how the whole medical system works.
yeah,
So to make a long story short, they gave me new medication and they called me the next day. I said, "Look, I'm a little bit better." And somehow I managed to recover. And I also had a lot of electrical interference. All my watches stopped, televisions turned on,
mm.
VCRs wouldn't work. I mean, all the classic, the classic
Right, right, right.
PE.
Mhm,
And then by May, I got pneumonia again, and I bumped into the baby's changing table, something that would give you a tiny bruise the size of a nickel or dime, but it spanned my entire hip area. It was purple and red. And I called the doctor, and we're getting insurance now July 1st because my husband literally had 3 jobs that year. He just kept jumping jobs because he had been a regional manager, and then the company got bought, he got laid off, and he had to
mm,
just take the first best thing just to support the family. He was the only breadwinner at this point. So after a year, we finally got insurance. So I go to the doctor and he sees the big bruise. He says, "Oh, you have beginning pneumonia, blah, blah, blah." So now he thinks that my husband is abusing me. And I said, "Look, I'm telling you the truth. This is what happened to me." And he looks at all my kids. He rips up the shirt on my boys. They're like 7 and 4.5. And my daughter is almost 1. Nobody has any bruises. And I said, "Look, I'm telling you the truth. This is what happened." So again, he said, "You have to go to the ER, you have to do all these lab tests." And I said, "I'm getting insurance in 6 weeks. I have lived through this for an entire year. Yes, I know something is wrong with my blood, because obviously I have basically no platelet count because I'm bruising, and I'm getting sick, so I have no white blood cells because my immunity is low." So again, antibiotics, inhalers, and steroids, and I managed to come out of that again. But this was just a long journey. So now I'm, slowly progressing in the right direction. So I'm trying to avoid doing, any traditional therapies or chemotherapies or because I was slowly but surely getting better. But the truth is that it took 6 years to be able to go to the grocery store, and I had so little blood in my body that I constantly if I stood up, I felt like I was gonna pass out.
mm,
So, it was really difficult to go to the grocery store. Sometimes I would have to sit down on the bottom shelf in the store, put my head down, or I was gonna pass out. I would have customers come up to me and say, "Are you about to pass out because you look like a ghost?" And I'm like,
mm,
"No, I got about 30 seconds before I have to sit down." And it was just my existence at the time. If I put my knee on the floor to tie my children's shoes, I would get a bruise on my knee from just touching the floor. I had
Uh-huh.
a stool in the kitchen because I couldn't stand up to cook for my kids. I had to sit on the stool because I would literally pass out. So, I was really sick, and it took a good 6 years before I was able to, um, go to the grocery store and without having to sit down.
Mm.
And it was during this time, so, like, just, 2 years after this first experience, that's when I had my second near-death experience. And, so this happened in the middle of the night. So, many times I would just wake up, um,
What year was this that you
this is
had this?
1994 now, the second one.
1994. We
Yeah.
had we had our NDEs exactly a year apart. I had
Wow.
mine in 1993 when I was 3 years old. So there's something about that early '90s, but
Right.
yeah,
I
it's
know,
funny
I mean
you're talking about Anaheim. Anaheim had a team called the Anaheim Angels. They
yes,
moved
they
to Los
did.
Angeles, and they made a movie called Angels in the Outfield,
Oh,
and I'm
yes.
wondering how much of your experience, who knows, influenced some degree of consciousness within that movie, but yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it
interesting
makes you
demographics
wonder,
there.
right? I mean, were there a lot of people in that time period that came to have this experience because we are on a mission to help the
Yeah,
world, lift our consciousness or whatever, right? I'm gonna say there's a reason why we had those experiences at that time because we
mhm,
came to do, our incarnation, to work for our incarnation
yeah,
in this life. So this second experience happened in the middle of the night. So many times I would just wake up, my head is pounding, take my head off the pillow, I pull my legs up just to get more blood flow into my head. So this night I wake up, my head is pounding, I take, my head off the pillow and then I leave. And it was just the same thing as the ER. 1 second you're in your body, next you're not. And I always joke that if they had given me the full experience in the ER the first time, I feel like it was on purpose that it
mhm,
was supposed to be this way because I probably wouldn't have incorporated the same way. It's almost like I needed time to ponder the first
mm,
one, and
mhm,
then I was ready to have my second experience because now it's like, "Okay, there's something to this," and I'm having all this electrical interference, and I know things about things that are gonna happen. All the intuitive awareness, was coming through, and I was constantly receiving messages and hearing the spirit world. So, here I am in the middle of the night. I get pulled out of my body, but this is so different because it's more like Star Wars where I'm tumbling through space, and
wow,
I get to this place that I call the mid station because I had an awareness that you could go higher and you could go lower. It's that the best example I have is you go into a skyscraper and it has 100 floors, push the 50th floor, and you get off on the 50th floor. Well, you can see what's on the 50th floor because you're on the 50th floor. You know there's floors above you and floors below you, but you haven't been to those floors, so you don't know what's on those floors, right?
mhm,
So it's that kind of a feeling that I call it the bouncing station floor because they sent me back. So I
mm,
get to this place, but as I get there, I hear the most beautiful music. And you cannot make this music on earth because I tried. I sat at the synthesizer for a week. I said, "Isn't there one sound that sounds as beautiful as the sound I heard?" And
mhm,
I swear there was over 200 sounds on that synthesizer. It was a Roland synthesizer, and not one sound
wow,
could come close to how beautiful that music was. But there's also something the melody was very simple. So it was a very simple melody, but there was also something very haunting about it, like this music or you've heard it
mm,
before, that there was a familiarity with it.
familiarity, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, mm,
Yeah, and, the best way I know I haven't done A Course in Miracles, but there is, a chapter in there called The Forgotten Song that somebody showed me,
mhm,
and that is probably the most accurate description. So for people who know what the Course in Miracles, you can just Google it, A Course in Miracles, The Forgotten
yeah,
Song. And feels exactly like that. There is this familiarity, but it's also kind of like where we come from and we're part of this. So I hear this beautiful music and I'm wondering where is this beautiful music coming from? So I look to the right and I see this tiny little log cabin. And I think that's so funny too, what we see, right? Because that's something that
mm,
was comforting to me. It looks like a Swedish sauna. So I'm opening the door and I look inside, but it's empty. So I'm like, wow, that's
mm,
so weird. I look to the left and I see a mirror image of what I see to the right. And I open the door and I look inside, but it's empty. So then I said, "Wow, where is this coming from?" But then I become aware of, and I call it the like a thick fog that's rolling in, but it has a spotlight in it because it's a light that sort of envelopes you, and you're just kind of part of the light. You're submerged by the light. But as I'm turning around in this light, right, what do I see? An outline of angels, and the music is coming from the angels. But I'm also aware of the fact that I am seeing things I don't believe, right? So I didn't believe in angels, but that's what I'm seeing. And the music is coming from the angels, but the light is, I'm going to say, is source itself. And I call it source because if I say God, I'm sticking, then I become a Christian or any Christian
Mm.
type of religion. So I call it source because
It's more of a
it's the
universal
yeah, it's
element.
more universal. It's where we come from, and we're part of that light. We carry that light within us. We return to that loving, unconditional love and light when we leave this physical body and go back. And then I become aware of two, I call them the spirit guides, and I
Mhm,
don't see them. They're more like light rod entities. I don't know what to call them, light beings. Um, and the one writes says to the other one, "What is she doing here? She can't be here. She has to go back." And I said, "No, no, no, no. Wait a second. How can I be outside my body and still be me? How does this
mhm,
work?" Right? Because I've been contemplating this for 2 years already. And the spirit guide on my left says, "Well, if I told you, you wouldn't remember." So there's
mhm,
definitely some wiping out mechanism, but you will remember this. And
mhm,
then it is as if I'm standing on the moon, and it's like a movie screen appears, or
mhm,
you just like an image appears. And it's like I'm standing on the moon looking down on the earth.
mhm,
But around the earth is this like diamond shaped, um, what I call the silvery glittery fishnet, 'cause for a lack of a better term, because we don't have Google yet back in the early 90s. So now you can just Google grid around the earth and you can get an image that is
mhm,
pretty similar to what I saw. But this, I called it the silvery glittery fishnet because I grew up in Sweden, and they have an archipelago of 24,000 islands. And I used to row this little boat for my grandmother, laying fishnets in the ocean to catch fish for the family to eat. And when she lifted out those fishnets in the early morning sun, those water droplets on the fishnet would sort of glitter in the morning sunlight. So I'm seeing this, what I call the silvery, glittery fishnet around the earth. And he says, the spirit guide says, everything on earth is connected to each other,
mhm,
and everything on earth is connected up to this grid. And with
mhm,
that message, I got sent back. And that's literally what has become my work today with ancestral healing.
mhm,
So as all these years, then progressed, it literally took me 12 years to become well. And during those 12 years, it was a lot of, my watch, after 1 year, my watch ticked 1 month. After 2 years, my watch ticked 2 months. It took 12 years for my watch to tick 12 months. And it
mhm,
was after 12 years that I finally sort of just said, "Okay, this is it." Like, I regained my health. But even, 8 years out in the early 2000s, I thought, this is it. I'm never gonna be fully normal again." And I started my like an online, toy business, a wooden toy business, because I thought I was never gonna hold a regular job or ever, integrate back into society. But during this time, I communicated with the spirit world. I heard voices from departed ones that were now in spirit. I got messages about the relatives being sick, or
mhm,
people being in danger, or my father passing away. And it was this constant stream of messages. But it literally took me 12 years to trust him because I came from such a scientific background.
mhm,
My father was a physician, and he would say, "Nope, black on white. This either exists or it doesn't. No, that doesn't exist. It can't happen." And I told him about my near death experience, and he said, "No, it can't happen. That can't be. It must be some kind of a hallucination, or the brain does something when we die." Well, now we know, right, from other experiences, that there is something very magical about these experiences, and it's not a hallucination in the brain, right?
mhm,
And and then now, after my father is in the spirit world, and he's come through, when I studied mediumship at Arthur Findlay College in England, and my dad would pop in and he would say, you proved me wrong." So, I would get a
That
laugh.
that must be really nice to hear that now all the stuff that you talk about for all these years, all of a sudden now he's understanding it, and he's just coming through. Yeah, that must be a real full circle moment for you.
Ye Right, absolutely, and it's funny because, all those years, it took me 12 years to really trust it and
Mhm,
say, "Okay, I get it." I mean, I used to have to write things down at the beginning to say, "Okay, it's not a déjà vu. I didn't make it up. I wrote it down on a piece of paper yesterday. It is true. I did have a premonition about this event." And after 12 years, my kids are now teenagers, and I said, "All right, it's time to go back to work." And I was looking on the website to see, what if I could do some kind of studying, could I do some online studying? Because I didn't wanna go back to computers and programming. I had
mhm,
changed so much, and I knew I had to be a healer of some sort. And I found this website, and it said naturopathic medicine. And then I realized it was a real medical school, so I said, "Forget it," and closed the computer, walked to the kitchen, and the spirit world dropped in. And the spirit world gave me the message, "No, you have to go to medical school and you have to be a naturopathic physician. You're here to combine old and new, East and West,
mm,
and you're to write 2 books." No, wait, 3. "And you are here to bring messages and healing to the people." And
uh,
I said, "I don't even understand what you're saying. I mean, what are you talking about? What
yeah,
book? What am I supposed to write? What do you mean messages?" And the message was just, "Well, we'll tell you when the time is right. Just go and get your prerequisites done." And so I literally enrolled in the prereqs for biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, and, physics and all the classes I didn't have. And I
mm,
literally had to start with advanced placement high school biology because I didn't have the bio class because I went to Europe and then I
mhm,
went straight to a business and computer science degree. So I had to do everything from the beginning. And then I went to med school when I was 54, graduated when I was 58.
mm,
And as soon as I graduated, got sent to Arthur Findlay College by another woman who said, "I'm a medium and I have somebody here who wants to talk to you." And it was my mom.
mm,
And again, the message came through, "You're to write 2 books." No, wait, 3. And I've gotten that again from professional mediums in England at Arthur Findlay College. It's always the
wow,
same message,
mm.
2, no, wait, 3. So I think the 3rd book is gonna be something different, right? Because it's 2, no, wait, 3.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
joke that I'm not leaving Earth anytime soon because I haven't written all my books yet. I've only written 1 book. So they're not gonna let me go,
You have the holy trinity of books to write, right? The 3,
right?
yeah.
True.
Yeah. Well, there's so much to unpack, there's so many different directions, and, it's having one near-death experience myself, I can't imagine having someone having one additional more than that. My question, I guess, is twofold as, documented near-death experiencers are roughly around 5 to 10% of the population,
Mhm,
which is probably more from undocumented NDEs. Have you ever kinda sat with spirit and said, "Hey, spirit, like, why was I this NDE gal and I had 2 different NDEs, not just 1?
mhm,
What part of my soul needed to have more than 1?"
mhm.
And have you kind of wondered that, like, why me kinda thing?
Yeah, I know that, I know what my work is here on Earth, and so I'm blessed of knowing that because most of us don't know that. And I know that I'm here as a healer. I know I'm here to help people heal and to raise consciousness and literally bring messages and healing to the world. And to work with ancestral healing. And now I know it's all in my astrological chart. So it's fascinating, right?
Oh,
Because unless you, find an astrologer that also knows how to read it. But I know that from my first near-death experience, I don't remember the date on my second one,
mhm,
but, people who have looked into this have been part of research and things like that too, but they can see that that first near-death experience had to happen on that specific day. So it's really interesting because I got sent home, right? I got sent home,
mhm,
the first time, and then the second time it happened at home, and then the 3rd day I hemorrhaged.
mm,
That was the day that it was supposed to happen. It was July 10th, 1992, and
wow,
all the planets lined up in a very specific way that day, and I've had astrologers tell me that that was the day the planets had to line up in this specific way, the same it was when you were born or something like
mm,
that, and it was to remind you of why you came to Earth this time. And I had to have that spiritual, experience to kind of put me on this path. But now I also know that I was born as a healer. I'm an 11 life path in numerology, so a master
Likewise.
life.
Yeah, same. I'm also 11 too. We're
Right?
twinning here.
You're
Yeah.
right, master life path 11, and you know that you came to be a healer in this life, but you're a born medium as an 11.
Mm,
And so we carry a healing frequency within our aura itself because this is our incarnation. We came to help
mhm,
people heal. And it doesn't surprise me that you're an 11. And
mm,
right? And you can feel the resonance too. Um and when I found out, that is your incarnation. You were supposed to have that experience on that day. And also, so this is my daughter that was born. So she's the one that came to give me that experience.
mhm,
And we are in each other's astrological charts. We've had like composite readings when they put the charts on top of each other. It's absolutely fascinating because you can see it's so clear that we all come with the sole purpose. We all come to have our special experience, even when we think, I mean, until later in life
mhm,
until I could make meaning and understand it and see it in my chart, in my numerology, in my own experiences. Now all makes sense. But
mhm,
a lot of us don't get to have that validation, right? We're kind of walking through life sort of blindfolded. So do a lot. I do sessions as messages from your spirit guides, which I call the
mhm,
fun session. I do a lot of different things.
mhm,
And that is, when you're tuning into your spirit guide, because your spirit guide is in a sense a reflection of who you are in this life and what you're here to learn. They're your master. They already are, experts in what you came to do.
mhm,
And that is really, that's really interesting and it's really funny because once I had this guy on my screen, this man, and he was I think it's funny because sometimes when you see a person, right? You think, "Oh, they might have this spirit guide or that spirit guide," and we make a judgment of the way
mm,
the person looks. And so I see this man on my screen. He's a very petite man, kind of bald with little round, gold medal glasses.
mhm.
Kind of the stereotype of how somebody would be portrayed as an accountant, in a TV
Yeah,
show.
yeah, yeah, I
So
know behind the scenes kinda person,
right.
yeah.
So I tune into the spirit guide and I get, I'm like 6'4". I'm a Viking and I'm a warrior. And I'm like, no, 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 it can't be right. Like this
Right,
guy is gonna think I'm crazy because I'm gonna tell him he has a Viking. So I proceed to tell him, I said, all right, so you have this warrior. It's like a warrior spirit guide, and because he is a warrior, you're a warrior. So there's something about you that is a warrior.
yeah,
And he tells me, I drop you off in the woods with a knife and you'll live for a week because you know how to survive and you're a warrior and you fight for justice.
mm.
I'm thinking this guy's going to think I'm a lunatic. And so he looks at me and he goes, I'm a retired police officer.
Wow, wow,
So,
wow, yes,
and he's like, "Yep, you're right on. I am a warrior, but I'm retired, but I still work a lot with justice and fighting corruption and things like that." So it's really interesting, right? How, we can't judge somebody, but I'm just after all these years, right? It's been like 33 years now. I know to trust it. It's whatever comes first, and it's the same thing when I work as a medical intuitive. Whatever that first message is, whatever diagnosis I hear, whatever I sometimes people get on, my screen and say, "Oh, I have all these allergies and all these things." I'm like, "That's not the problem. I know what you have. It's this." And so
mm,
it's really interesting how I feel like I went to medical school to just be able to help people find to find them a path to healing, right? Not necessarily heal them because I'm not in clinic anymore. I only work online on Zoom.
right,
And I work, as a medical intuitive, ancestral healer, medium, messages from your spirit guides, and a couple of other sessions. And it's interesting because that's who I am. I needed the degree so I could back up
mhm,
what's really going on because I'll get a lot of people that fall through the cracks. And I think we are before I went to medical school, I used to think, like most of us, well, if I get sick, I'll go to the ER, they'll figure out what's wrong with me, and then I'll get some plan or medication or surgery or something. But a lot of things, the doctors don't know what it is, right? You go to the
mm,
doctor, you do all the tests, And people get on my screen like, "I already did that test. I did that test," and they couldn't find anything wrong with me. And I'm like, "I know what you have. You have this thing," because those are the people that fall through the cracks. And I always feel like that's really the reason because I'm working intuitively with people
Mhm.
and I work with the spirit world. So, am I a medical intuitive or a medical medium? I'm going to say both because I work intuitively, but I also always work with the spirit world, right? Your spirit guides are always there.
Mm.
And it's really just to help people find a path to healing, creating healing in their life.
Wow.
Yeah.
That must be so relieving for clients who and I've seen them in my practice, they have we know all of them, they've tried every stop on the train station, and they're completely burnt out, exhausted, depleted, apathetic, and then they come to you for a session, and you know, like, what they've been going through medically from your background, they have the safety with you because of your degrees and your credentials
Mhm,
and body of work, and your bandwidth of knowledge is able to really go a lot further to that
mhm,
source, and, that just must be so relieving for people to
mhm,
really find solutions and answers when they've been
mhm,
searching and running around for years, and they must be
mhm.
just at their wits' end. That must be awesome to experience for that client.
Yeah, it's pretty, it's so crazy because there are times when, I would say, okay, you don't even live in the United States, you live in this country. And once I had this person who was like in Romania, and I knew that their daughter needed surgery. So I said, I know somebody who can help you. Find this doctor. And they happen to live in that city. I mean, it's not divine guidance or what, right? Because I can't treat them and I'm not diagnosing anyone. I'm
Mhm,
just working, intuitively and using my knowledge. So it's more like a conversation, but helping them say, I think you have this, or this is what I'm getting intuitively. Ask your doctor to run this test or ask for this, medication or go in this direction. And that's what's so helpful because it's really difficult when you have something makes you fall through the cracks. Um,
mhm.
and the doctors often don't have time either, right? We have built a medical system that the doctors don't have time. They have too many
Mm,
patients, too little time. And
right.
right? And I get all the weird ones in the world, so I get a lot of exposure to things that often we don't even learn in medical school. So when you go to the doctor, you go to your general practitioner.
Mhm,
Well, we only know this much. So if you have something that's a vascular disease,
mhm,
that physician probably has never even heard of it.
mhm.
And then
Yeah.
you go so he doesn't even know where to send you, right? He's gonna run the regular test and say, "Well, it's not one of these things. I'm gonna send you to okay, you have some heart palpitations. Let me send you to the cardiologist. Well, your heart's fine. You just have some PVCs. Okay, now try the lung doctor, right? Pulmonology."
Mhm.
And you just get sent around, but nobody can find it because you need a vascular
Yeah.
surgeon, right? You're not gonna get sent to a vascular surgeon without having the workup. But how do you somebody that can do the workup? I don't even know what you have.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's what's makes it so difficult, for a lot of people to find the right care that they need.
Mhm. Yeah. There seems like I mean, in your near-death experience, and it's very, runs in parallels with my, channel subject, the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder, when you're talking about the different levels and the different rungs of heaven, so to speak. And it seems like you're able to incorporate that in your practice, where
Mhm,
based on our perceptional viewpoint, that's our level of engagement, understanding
mhm,
with what's in front of us, and you're coming from this higher place. So the bandwidth and the broad
mhm,
aspect to facilitate healing is a lot more enhanced, if you will, than person B who's coming from maybe a more limited left brain model. So that's really fascinating. I know I'd love to talk to you for hours on end, and we'll have to have you come back. But one of my final questions for you is I know you came from what you described as more of like a left brain,
mhm,
intellectual, medical model type family, and you had 2 near-death experience,
mhm,
which, there was a lot of what you described kind of a resistance, and there was a processing, incubation period before you were able to really transform, yeah, I guess, an atheistic point of view to now a knowing. For someone who hasn't had an NDE, who comes from that left brain model, who's
mhm,
maybe listening now, how could they transform without having, this grand experience? Like, is it possible for
mhm.
someone who comes from that? And I'm wondering if your experiences growing up has really allowed you to understand their world and how they could maybe, evolve and adapt a little bit differently to the spirit realm.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to say the best way to tune into the spirit world is to meditate. And, a lot of people say, I don't know how to meditate. You're not going to be able to shut off your thoughts, okay?
Mm,
Because your brain is keeping you alive, okay? Your nervous system is always working. You want to know if the toaster is on fire in your kitchen, okay? You're not going to shut down your nervous system. So, but, when you're meditating, you learn to slowly get rid of all those thoughts. Okay, here's the grocery list again. Oh, here's my to-do list of what I'm doing at the office tomorrow, right? All those things, you just slowly put them aside. Okay, well, I'll go back to that when I'm done meditating. And then you start meditating and then the thought comes back. So in the beginning, you have a lot of thoughts like that. And it's just learning to say, okay, I'm going to put it aside. And, some people like to sit in the quiet. Some people like to use different kind of music. Some people use music with, binaural beats in it to help
mhm,
bring your brain level down to a lower state. And those can all be helpful. And it's just a matter of finding, what resonates with you. There is no right or wrong way of
mm,
meditating. But the more we meditate, the more we learn to shut off our senses that are constantly, working and scanning the environment to keep us safe. But the more we meditate, the more we can tune in to the spirit world. The spirit world is right next to us. So
mhm,
it's literally like you're standing in your bathroom and you have a see through shower curtain, right? It's like you can see the spirit world on the other side faintly through the shower curtain. You just have to learn to pull the shower curtain back. They're right there, right? Your spirit guides are right there. And don't be, discouraged. It's just a matter of, in the beginning, just meditate 10, 15 minutes. It's going to seem
mhm.
like 3 hours in the beginning. And after a while, all of a sudden, you're going to be, wow, I can't believe I meditated a whole hour. Wow, I feel really calm now, right?
Oh,
Because the more we meditate, the more we center ourselves and create that calm and peace. But
mm,
every single medium that I have ever met, and I have been to Arthur Findlay College in England for many weeks, back and forth
mhm,
to study mediumship, and every single medium I have ever met, and I have ever interviewed on my own podcast, we all meditated to get there. It is
mm.
how you connect with your spirit guides. It's how you connect with the spirit world, and how you become more intuitive yourself.
Yeah, yeah. So some is like meditation is maybe the new medication, as they say, right?
Right.
It's funny, you go to a lot of primaries now, they're saying you gotta meditate. They almost sound like spiritual teachers.
Mhm.
They suggest if you tried to meditate, that would never happen years ago. So the medical system is certainly, it's taking a long time to change, but they're opening themselves up to some of the westernized, belief systems and ideologies. I'm sorry, Eastern belief
Mhm.
systems,
Yeah.
not in westernized practices. Um, Lastly, before we go, and we'd love to have you come back, um, I'm certainly a believer that spiritual experiences or awakenings by themselves don't necessarily change you, but what you do with them, what you learn with them can. And I'm curious, right now we're living in a world that has a lot of, I don't know, a lot of variance to it, so to speak. There's a lot of things happening. What are some of the biggest takeaways that you could speak to what's happening right now, in this current time that many could hold on to? Because a lot of people feel like
Mhm.
they're drowning and there's something that they're trying to latch onto. And I believe these experiences are timeless and they have the ability to really help people to navigate with whatever's happening in front of them. And I'm
Mhm.
wondering if there's like a triage of something that's really calling to you that needs to be spoken to this moment right here, right now, kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, focus on yourself and heal your own wounds. And so I work a lot with ancestral healing.
Mhm,
And every single issue that we struggle with, whether it's a fear, whether it's we're not getting the promotion at work,
mhm,
whether we don't feel seen and heard in our relationship, it all comes from somewhere. And it all comes from the ancestors because you came from your ancestors. And so I work a lot with that. But the interesting part is that, via quantum physics, if you know a little bit about quantum physics, right? When we heal ourselves, we are connected to everybody that we love, everybody in our family, all our ancestors, people in the spirit world, everybody that you know on the earth plane. We're all connected to each other, right? Just like they taught me during my near death experience. But when we create healing for ourselves, there is something that changes within this lineage. And I have worked with people who have lost contact with their children, haven't spoken to their children in, 5 years, haven't spoken to their mom in 10 years. We do ancestral healing, and guess what happens? Like, within 2 weeks, I get an email, and it says, "You won't believe who just called me. My daughter just called me. I haven't spoken to her in 5
Wow.
years." Or, now I'm best friends with my mom. I talk to my mom every day." They
Hmm.
hadn't spoken for over 10 years. So there is there is, like Einstein said, "Spooky action at a distance." I'm gonna say it's magic at a
Mhm.
distance because we are such divine creatures, and all we have to do is focus on ourselves, create healing for the wounds that you have, because that is gonna create a ripple effect through the entire universe and everybody you know.
Mm. Wow. That's beautiful, and I hope all my listeners will take that in because it's like that quote that
Mhm,
said, "Yesterday I was smart and I wanted to change the world, and today I was wise and I decided to change myself." Because by changing yourself, you are thinking globally by acting locally and making, and more people
mhm,
could do that. That's what's in the context of our controls
mm,
when we're feeling so much of life out of our control. So thank you for sharing that. My friend Dr. Lotte Valentin, where would be the best place for people to, get in touch with you,
mhm,
purchase a session, follow your work? Where's the best place for people, as well as your 2 books and
mm.
hopefully now three? I know that's what the intuitives have said throughout the years. So I fully believe that, and look forward to sharing that book when it comes out on my podcast too. But where's the best place for people to find you?
Yeah, just go to drlotte.com. So DRLOTTE.com. And on there, you can see all the different kinds of sessions. You can book a session if you want to
Mhm.
work with me one on one. I also have something called Divine Spiritual Lessons, of Divine Spiritual Lessons, where I have pre recorded, it's about, I don't know, like 7 hours long, about the mother wound for ancestral healing. And I'm right now teaching another course in ancestral healing, my third course that I'm teaching for the Shift Network
Wow.
about ancestral healing, which I call Kindraya because that's a trademark name, where it's an incorporation of the cognitive, the somatic, and the superconscious awareness, and integrating all of those aspects into creating healing for yourself and for all your loved ones in the spirit world and here on earth.
Wow, beautiful. Well, do check out her course, her website, give her a follow on Instagram. She's got a beautiful page as well as her podcast too. So she does a lot for humanity, and I think what does they say? The meaning of life is to find your gift, the purpose of it to give is your way. And I say this in almost
Mhm.
all my podcasts. And boy, it took some time, but now it seems like you're recognizing that ND is not a curse but a gift, and you're giving so much of that beauty that you experience back to the world. And that's so beautiful to see, and really living a life true to that number of 11, my friend.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming
Yeah.
on. You're welcome back anytime. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.